Great. All right. Call the meeting. Call the meeting to order here at 5:06 p.m. on the Finance Subcommittee. We have no presentation. I'm just jumping right into that. Sure. Let's get on to it. John, I thought it said. Yes, we'll try yours just for the sake of time. Right.
Yes.
I'll choose for you on your account.
That's right. Yeah. No, scary.
We now.
I already had that problem last week.
All you do it to me.
You're the one who sent the invite.
Yes. All right. I will share the screen. All right.
Do we have anybody who's watching this and willing to interact with Mark right in?
Nobody we need to invite in. There are probably apparently there's some observers.
Okay.
Right hands.
Sure. So thank you very much for having this meeting tonight at 5 o'clock. This is the finance meeting that we have been talking about for the last several weeks related to the FY27 budget reductions in realignment. This is only one component of our budget. This is not the full budget presentation that we'll have for FY27. We will be providing that at our meeting 2 weeks from tonight when we get back from February recess and back to our normal school committee routine. So welcome everybody to the FY27 reductions and realignment budget update for the Finance Committee on today, February 11th. I want to walk you through some of the slides that we're going to discuss tonight. First, we will discuss the initial FY27 budget calendar, the FY27 budget philosophy that we were in agreement on as a finance committee to move the work for FY27 back in the fall. We will then talk about the FY27 level service budget presented, and then look at our revised budget timeline and the revised revenue to expense scenario that was brought to us early in January, that we've been having discussions about at our last several finance committee meetings. Let me go over some recent budget history of FY24 and 25, as well as the current year FY26. Really feel like the recent history provides us a great learning opportunity to make sure that we're moving forward in the right direction on the best interests of the Milton Public Schools. Do a little analysis of that budget history, talk a little bit about our budget goals and priorities and rationale for how we're going to make some of these reductions in this year, and also talk about some of the realignments that we have been discussing in the fall, and also what the overall picture will look like for positions added and positions reduced for next year in the Milton Public Schools. Thought it was really important to talk about the original FY27 operating budget calendar. Back on October 15th, we had initial meetings with the Finance School Committee and the Town Administrator. On November 3rd, we had an initial School Committee Warrant Committee meeting on School Budget 101 and some timeline issues. On November 19th, we talked about our level service budget of 5.2% and presented that to the Finance Committee. And in November, we provided that level service budget of 5.2% to the Town Administrator. The philosophy that we had generated as a committee was to talk about, first and foremost, long-term budget sustainability. strengthen our tier one instruction, which is one of our leadership team priorities, actively address student learning gaps, and improve district, school, and classroom culture and climate. Again, this philosophy was developed in September in preparation for how we would view our resource allocation for FY27. And we thought it was a good news story that we might be able to make some realignments towards these goals. So back in the fall, originally we wanted to make sure that first and foremost, we had a long-term view of our budget, and we were trying to make sure that we were doing so in a sustainable way. The consistency of how we can operate from a fiscal standpoint means that we can operate from a fiscal standpoint of stability and strategic thinking for teaching and learning. And that stability is good for teachers, it's good for children, it's good for families, it's good for the town budget. Strengthening tier one instruction is what one of our main 5 pillars is this year. All students require high quality, evidence-based differentiated teaching through tier one instruction. Carla Cosa and I, who's the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, are in buildings every single week. We'll be at the Pierce tomorrow, and we will be looking for tier one instruction. We will also be looking for actively addressing student learning gaps, which is our second goal in the budget. And we'll also be looking to see how we can improve and what's going on in schools related to culture and climate in our schools. So those bottom 3 budget philosophy statements are rooted, as you can see, in our leadership team priorities. When we met back in the fall, this was the level service budget that we put forward. As you can see, if you go from the starting point to final FY26 budget and working your way down, each category has a different amount to it that added a percentage increase to the budget. And as you slowly go from salaries, which is by itself $3,322,572, you can just walk yourself through to a 5.2% increase. These are the major cost areas that we were presenting on, the increases and or some of the decreases to the budget that we were projecting for FY27. And we were landing at a 5.2% increase, which is generally the average for Milton over the last, say, 10 or 15 years, and pretty average for districts across the state. The final FY26 budget will be $72,873,913. And the level service budget that we had presented in the fall for FY27 would be $76,662,595, which would have been an increase of $3,788,681, equaling 5.2%. We go back to the budget calendar because we want to let folks know that in meetings with the town administrator in December, and then requesting a meeting with the finance committee of the select board to really solidify the revenue and expense gap that had been provided and discussed in December. We wanted to go with the select board members and the school committee members to solidify that that was the actual gap from expenses to revenue that we are going to experience in FY27, given the revenue projections that had developed over time. And it came to our attention that we needed to reduce our budget by $2.1 million in that meeting that we had with the school committee and the select board finance committees. That would be 2.1 from our level service request. And at that time, that percentage and that dollar amount was a great concern of ours. So that's when we started to communicate with our families and our staff. A lot of good discussions had taken place after January 7, where we met with the town administrator, school committee folks, met with select board folks and warrant committee folks. And there was a real concerted effort to sand down the edges of that shortfall for FY27 to see if we could add some revenue back lessen the gap between the revenue shortfall and the school's expenses for FY27. As of January 27, that shortfall went from 2.1 to 1.4 after a lot of good work by Nick Milano and his team in the school board and the select board. And then on February 3rd, from 1.4 down to $1,049,000. So we're grateful for all the work that took place between the January 7 meeting and the February 3rd meeting. It seems to be, after all the different fiscal review and navigating of the pluses and minuses, this seems to be the number that the town administrator is sitting on as what he believes is the best one we can come up with in terms of how we can fund the schools for next year. With that said, we really think it's important to always look at the last couple of fiscal years and then look at the fiscal year we're in to look towards how we can make projections for future budgets. The reason why this recent budget and future impact slide is important is it demonstrates some of the one-time expenses that we use by the schools in order to keep up with the growing staff that we had here at Milton Public Schools. Just to remind folks, at the end of FY24, the budget was short by $3.8 million, and there was a use of one-time funds that were transferred from our revolving accounts in order to make the budget solvent at the end of fiscal 24, which is our legal obligation. The amount of money that was used to fill that gap was taking out of revolving accounts related to circuit breaker, reserve circuit breaker, Medicaid, reserves, community schools, food service, and some remaining town opera funding. We then walked into FY25, obviously coming off a substantial deficit in utilizing revolving funds in a way that was not ideal, but needed to triage the 24 budget. So we understand why it happened, because the budget was short and we needed to make sure that we could resolve it by the end of the FY24 fiscal year. FY25, in sequence of that, was then $2 million short. And the way that the district was able to resolve that reduction was by freezing all spending and hiring as of January of that fiscal year, requesting and receiving a $1 million one-time funding support from the Warren Committee in June of 25, and also benefiting from an additional unexpected state circuit breaker payment in July of 25. The reason why, again, we share this is this just shows how fragile our budget is and how one-time money being used to triage the budget is hard to maintain moving forward. When we walked into FY26, which is when I started in June of the school year, of last school year, entering the school year, first of all, our budget was comforted and supported in an incredible way by the infusion of funds for the 2025 spring override. And we want to thank the community of Milton for providing that. That huge boost of financial support allowed us to bring all of our staff forward and fill most of our budget lines to the point where we were sufficient. However, we did have some vacancies over the summer, and after reviewing the budget, Assistant Superintendent Katie Blake and myself felt it was important to make sure that we prioritized our revolving accounts that had been utilized for one-time payment to resolve FY24 and 25 and start to restore them. And that was an open conversation we started to have in August and September with this Finance Committee. Ultimately, that is why our philosophy for the budget of FY27 first and foremost had financial stability as the number one thing that we want to talk about. So what we decided to do was not fill some vacancies in order to move that money into some of the revolving accounts that had been depleted, like circuit breaker, transportation, and athletics. We also had to reset our budget lines based on the review of previous years' projected and actual costs. So a lot of our budget lines were budgeted at projected costs that weren't actually rooted in the actual costs that we were experiencing over the last few years. So we wanted to make sure that those budget lines reflected the most recent actuals so we could budget the accurate amount. Those actual expenditures were in lines such as substitutes, coverages, and utilities. And lastly, we used some of those funds in order to utilize the opportunity to increase support for targeted student achievement needs. More importantly, we added small staffing to the Tucker School and also supported the grade level facilitator stipends in order to support an instructional leadership team at Tucker as a pilot in order for them to make some extended supports to impact scores in a positive way for the students of Tucker. All of that will be saved and be moved forward into next year as well as a highlight moving forward. The funds also utilized for next year, you'll see in the budget that we have moving forward as well. The analysis of that future impact on the budget, first and foremost, want to make some statements that the impact of the two challenging fiscal years absolutely compromised our budget in FY26. And luckily, we made some shifts in the beginning of the year in order to mitigate that. The ongoing work impacted the limited growth of the town. This ongoing work moving forward from 27 to 28 we're really going to have to be thoughtful about revenue forecasts that we understand may be concerning and that may need to be addressed by correspondingly limiting the budget expenses of the town in the school side, which basically means we have revenue that we know that we'll be getting in every year. We don't know the percentage of what that will look like or the amount, but that amount will not always be able to be at the same level that the expenses will grow as we might want them to grow. The school department budget can only conform to this 3.7% increase from FY26 to next year with a reduction in salary lines and some non-salary lines and an increase in fees. We have been advocating since June 7 that if we do have to make a decrease for this school year, that we really want to invest in substantial conversations with the town in order to re-examine the current format of both town and schools budgets only increasing by 3%. We do not believe that's sustainable for the schools. So we're taking action tonight to balance our budget with some reductions in the short term, but really want to have a hard conversation with the town and the varying committees and the warrant committee, et cetera, about having a different expense structure for the schools because it does not feel like it would be sustainable. In order to be financially responsible and sustainable, we are looking to propose a reduction to meet the salary budget, making reductions in salaries in order to match the gap that we have of $1,049,000. The district intends to use district-based fiscal years 24 and 25 as learning opportunities. We have resolved some of our budget years using one-time funds, which if you do that more than a few years at a time, it's not good fiscal practice. Depleting revolving accounts is also not good fiscal practice. And we believe that using thoughtful fiscal strategies that we took in FY26 that resulted in supporting and underfunding the budget lines as a learning opportunity as well. Before we get to the reductions, we want to let folks know that we had some goals and priorities, overarching goals of avoiding reducing student-facing positions, and we wanted to protect the classroom. We wanted to identify workflows to redistribute work for non-student-facing positions that would be reduced, and we wanted to look at other non-staff reallocations of resources as well. This budget, make sure you know before we show you the list that there will be no reductions to elementary classroom teachers. There will be no reduction to art, music, PE, or world language. There will be no reductions to clubs, athletics, or transportation. We'll actually be adding a bus. And there will be some fees that offset those programs, but they will always be offered to our students. There will be no reduction to mental health, adjustment counselors, or guidance services. And there will be no reductions to our reading, early literacy, math intervention specialists. So all those programs will stay fully staffed. I say that out loud because I think when people were worried about the reductions, that these are the faces that they see every day on the playground when they pick up and drop off. And they thought that their child's support services or their classroom teacher would be impacted. So we were trying to be thoughtful and make sure that people understand that that's not the case. The budget reductions that we have on the screen for you today are the ones that we've been talking with our principals about. We've also updated our full leadership team, and we've been working on this throughout the month of January. This list was longer when we thought the reduction was going to be 2.1. It got a little smaller when we thought the reduction would be 1.6. And then it got a little smaller after we realized it would be 1.049. So we do have other positions that were on the other lists that were considered to be potential positions to be reduced. But now that we got down to the lower number, this was the final list for discussion with the school committee. This is a flexible list. We know we're going to get feedback from the public. We know we're going to get feedback from the school committee. And we want to make sure that this is just our thinking at this point in time in the best interest of the district. First and foremost, we had an equity coach position that was not filled this year. It's currently vacant. So we don't have to remove someone from a job. We will be not filling that coaching position. The special education teaching position was also vacant this year. We did not fill it, and we will be not filling it for next year. The director of finding for performing arts was also vacant this year. You see an asterisk next to that title. We had put in a lead teacher to take on some of the services that administrator would be doing if they were normally in the position. And so currently we have that filled with a $5,000 stipend in order to provide the work of that directorship as a lead teacher. But that was vacant this year and will not be filled. We will be reducing the position of data and analytics. We plan on putting back a position that was not filled this year, which is our director of technology that supports teachers and students in our technology work in the schools. And we'll be adding the data analytics to that role. It will also be taking some of that service delivery from that position and moving it to other positions. So that is an example of one of the positions that may have been done even if there was not a reduction in these positions. We feel it's really important for us as educators to look at the money that we have, what's working, what we need to condense, how we can reprogram and realign our resources in the best interest of children. And that's a great example. We feel like we can have the director come back to the district, the physician come back, and we can embed that work of data analytics into that role. We have a total of 6 BCBAs in the district. We propose reducing 2 of those 6, and the 4 remaining BCBAs will be shared between the Glover and the Tucker, which is currently happening, one being shared between the high school and the middle school, one being shared between the Cunningham and the Collycott, and the 4th position being shared between our separate programs at the preschool and at the Collycott. So we have realigned that resource to serve our students. So our families that get BCBA services in their children's IEPs, we feel we have a full complement of services for that IEP delivery in their students' plan. We plan on reducing the director of nursing position, and you see an asterisk there. We are going to propose that that director position become a lead nurse position, which means that the lead nurse will be a nurse in the building that will be supporting the entire district from that office. And at times we'll need to visit the schools in order to provide professional development and run meetings. But that position will be in front of students. The current nursing director does not have a student-facing role. So we will have 6 nurses, 1 in each building. One of those lead nurses, the lead nurse will be one of those 6 in the building. And we will have 1 district float nurse that will provide relief to the schools when they need it, whether it's through screenings that they have to do for the DESE and the Department of Health, or whether it's when nurses are absent. We truly also, when we met with all the nurses last week, there used to be 2 float nurses in the district, as well as a nurse director, beyond the 6 that we had. So there's a total of 9 nursing staff prior. If we feel like the 1 float is challenging next year, we would be recommending that a 2nd float would be provided. So we're anticipating that that's something that we need to keep an eye on. But we feel, and I feel confident that a lead nurse, which is how the district was staffed prior to COVID, that going back to that pre-COVID staffing model is appropriate for a district of about 4,200 students. In the district, we have academic testers. This is a person who works 3 days a week. They basically support teachers, special educators who need to do academic testing to prepare for the meetings that they have with families, whether that's an annual review, special education meeting, a 3-year reeval, special education meeting, or a initial meeting. That testing role used to rest with our special educators. That was part of the role in their caseload. We believe that we can support the work of reducing this position and have the work between our school psychologists and our special educators to be able to pick up that in a differentiated structure that we'll be working on and providing to our staff later in the spring. This is a position that was added because of the volume of testing that was expected and the volume of requests for special education. And we think that that's normalizing to a certain degree and feeling we can reduce that position. Again, is not a direct student-facing position. We also have 2 504 coordinators. They work with families and educators to have the meetings with families related to their 504 accommodations in the school. Those 2 coordinators, one of which is at the middle and high school, and one of which supports 4 elementary schools. We feel that some of those meetings that are held at the 504 level, which are initial meetings or annual meetings, can be done by the remaining 504 coordinator, but also put back to the folks who used to do that work before we had, which are potentially your nurse, potentially your assistant principal, your adjustment counselor, and your guidance counselor. Those are the folks who are the vital members of that team, depending if the 504 is for a medical issue or an academic issue, the assignment would be made to one of those folks to be able to provide that workflow. So we believe that we can take one of the two and reduce it. Again, not a student-facing position. We have three teachers, two of which at Pierce Middle School and one at Milton High School. We've been working with Principal Karen Cahill at the high school and Bill Fish at the middle school and identifying class size. After meeting 3 different times with them to go over their class sizes and what they felt that they could reduce in order to provide support to this reduction in this gap. At the middle school, we're looking at one elective course, which is an elective reading and English course for any student to join as a non-academic class, but also in an academic enrichment class. It's not their core team English or language class. And also a special education teacher, after reviewing the caseloads and the schedules of the students impacted. If I can quote Bill Fish from yesterday, I think even in good times, budget good times, that these positions may need to be reduced because the number of students that they actually interact with are minimal. So I appreciate his honesty and him going through the schedule as tightly as he did. So we feel like we can reduce those 2 positions at the middle school. At the high school, the same conversation was had, and the English department, we believe, can have one teacher reduced and have class sizes impacted somewhat, but not dramatic. So your child will not see any dramatic increase at the middle school in any of his core or her core classes. They will have one less academic elective to take, and the special educators' caseloads will go up by a little bit to make up for the one that was being reduced. And we feel like it will be minimal impact to the students at Pierce, and we feel like it will be minimal impact to the students at Milton High School. But they are 3 people that will be getting letters of reduction, and they are student-facing. So we're getting to the bottom of our district-facing and student-facing and adult-facing positions. We have an out-of-district coordinator. That position, point 3, we have a full-time out-of-district coordinator who does that full-time. This was supplemental support. This person would go out to schools where students who go to get services outside of public schools for a variety of very good reasons to meet their needs. We just have a liaison that goes to those schools. So we'll be reducing the person who's a point 3 in that position. Lastly, we have a DEIB coordinator here at the central office level. We're reducing that position from a full-time position of 5 days a week down to 3 days a week. We feel like the work that we're engaging with Dr. Shavers with related to retention of staff, hiring of staff, increasing the diversity in our district, as well as problem solving with educators. Part of that work can be taken over by the new HR director. Part of that professional development will be taken over by Carla Cosa, which is a teaching and learning professional development position. And the other work will be engaged with as with Dr. Shavers consult, being here 3 days a week. So certainly not ideal. We have 3 positions that are vacant that won't be filled. We have several positions that are not student facing, and then we have a few that are facing. It also represents all levels of the district. We have central office reductions, school-based reductions, Unit B administrator reductions, and educator reductions. We do not have any reductions right now in our Unit D paraprofessional category, and that's because all those folks are written into the IEPs, and we feel obligated, and we have a legal obligation to leave them in place unless those IEPs gradually release that service delivery, and then therefore that position may or may not be reduced as well. But we did not include them in these reductions. These reductions were based on the fact that we have a gap of about $1 million that we need to get to. The next list that you're going to see, not to confuse anybody, but the next list that you're going to see is some of the reallocations that we were trying to make in the fall. We were trying to reallocate some of the funding that we had when we thought we were going to have a 5.2 increase in order to make the district leaner, but also provide services for certain functions. So first and foremost, we had a very hard start for our middle school and high school families that did not get a bus to school. And when we talk about culture and climate as one of our 5 priorities, it was a real challenge for those families to access education when they couldn't get their children to school. Couldn't get to we put about 120 students on the buses that we had remaining this year, but I don't think that was a sustainable solution. And so we feel between the increase in fees and an allocation to the budget that we will add back 1 bus. We will increase the assistant superintendent position from 3 days a week to 5 days a week. We did this transition during the school year while we had the funds available. We think every public school of our size should absolutely have an assistant superintendent that's full-time. Our work is teaching and learning and professional development, and that's what this role supports. The third add would be the lead teacher. Basically, that's only $6,000 because that's the stipend that the lead nurse would get for taking the place of the director. So that's a substantial savings. We'll have any of the existing nurses can apply for the lead nurse role. We'll hire them in the spring. They'll get the stipend that's in the contract, and we'll return to the nursing department format that we had prior to COVID. We're adding a few more nurses, but we never had a nursing director before, and we're going back to lead nurse, and that just reflects the ad. The same is what we're doing with fine and performing arts. We reduced the fine and performing arts director of about $140,000, and we replaced it with a lead teacher who will make their salary plus $6,000 in order to do some of the administrative and professional development work that is required. We are piloting that this year as well, and that's going very, very well, so we can continue that to next year. Part of the work that we're doing to take action steps for Pawtucket School was to increase the stipend that teachers get to be lead grade level facilitators. That means that they are helping lead the work with their grade level teachers. So if I'm the 3rd grade level facilitator, I'm working with my principal, my assistant principal, and a content director in order to make sure that my other 3 grade 3 teachers have all the information. They're going to help lead meetings. They're going to be part of the instructional leadership team of their schools. This was a great idea by Principal Celeste Hoag at the Tucker, and we wanted to scale that up across the entire district. That's important for our teachers' voice to be heard in all of our professional development, all of our curriculum work, all of our strategies to impact students who are not learning. It was a great idea to pilot at the Tucker this year, and it's such a good idea that we're moving it, scaling it across all 4 elementaries. We are also keeping in place the team chair addition in personnel that we made. The team chair at the Tucker is only a 0.6. We increased them to 4 days a week to a 0.8, so they can provide more consulting and observations of our students and IEPs in order to support teachers in the classroom. We want to continue those good strategies that we developed this year through the leadership of the Tucker principal, and they deserve to be kept into the budget next year. We are planning to increase our contracted service budget line in our special education department because we're reducing the tester, and because we're reducing the 504 coordinator, just in case we need people to fill in, and we might need some third-party folks to support that. This is a safety net of $50,000 to pay for some of those third-party roles that may need to come in for either our psychologists and our testers and some of our team chair work. We are also adding a 0.4 to our human resources position, going from 3 days a week to 5 days a week. A district of 4,200 students and over 640 staff. This is a very busy office. It needs to be a position that's here 5 days a week. To work with the union, being a concierge for our staff, ensuring that all the benefits are administrated appropriately, all of our leaves and all of our work are legally provided, that we're meeting all our legal obligations, the hiring that we're doing, the diversity work that we're doing. This role will be vital in our work moving forward, and we feel it's important to add that back for next year at a level of 5 days a week and not 3 days a week. In order to support these ads, we have reduced lines in our budget. We're reducing general expense lines by $143,000. We're increasing user fees for bus, student activities, athletics, and building use rentals of about $75,000. And we're making adjustments to our stipend budget of about $51,000. So we are utilizing this opportunity to realign the resources and direct them to things that we think are most important for our staff. That has been a discussion that's going on in September, October, November, December with our leadership team. And now that we know that we also have to reduce roughly $1 million, the page before that, as we went through, has those reductions of positions that we were very thoughtful and strategic about in order to make the budget number that we've been provided by the town at this point in time. The last slide just shows the net total budget reductions, total budget reallocations, and that's meeting the number that that's the gap town provided. So I know that was a lot of words, and if anybody has any questions or thoughts, and I can leave whatever I need back when we need to discuss.
Question.
Yeah.
Just one, I know I'm supposed to be down, but on the budget adjustments, the second from the top, which assistant superintendent is that?
Teaching and learning.
What is your time? Do you need to?
Yeah,
Are you?
I have to get out by 6 because I was so late at our last meeting. I got in trouble.
But do you want to go first if you?
No.
Thanks for walking us through that, John and Katie. I know these decisions are not easy. So I appreciate the care and the sort of adherence to your goals around reducing the impact on children. I have a number of granular questions, but I think a big question I have is, and I'll start with the big one, is around our goals next year for allocating to the circuit breaker or withdrawing less from the circuit breaker. And I'm wondering, I know we want to continue to build that revolving account up. And I'm wondering what our goals are there and what the interplay is between the withdrawal level from the revolving account and this year.
So generally the interplay for the revolving account for circuit breaker is 3 revenue sources. It's federal money, it's the state circuit breaker, it's whatever local funds we get to support special education for those services. Those 3 revenue sources are strategically supervised and monitored by Katie throughout the year. The general guidance is that you would keep 1 year's worth of your circuit breaker because you can move that over by law into the next fiscal year. The reason why we don't do that with local receipts is that, so there's 3 revenue sources: local, which has to be spent by June 30th, the fiscal year; circuit breaker, that doesn't have to be fully expended until June 30th of the next fiscal year; and then federal funds, which have to be expended by September of the next fiscal year. So when we look at those budgets, we decide which dollars do we want to keep and what can we afford to roll over next year. And usually the targeted dollar revenue stream is circuit breaker because we know we can have the whole year next year to expend. The guidance is you should have always about 1 year's worth of circuit breaker. Some people hold to that, some people have less than that. I would say roughly that I'd want to get to the goal. We started the year, our circuit breaker amount is about $3.5 million. We started the year with $8,700. So we're roughly about $3,400,000 short. So we felt compelled when we looked at the budget and saw that we were starting with $8,000 to not fill positions in order to start patch those holes in the budget. So what does that mean moving forward? This table, this group talked about over a period of time, incrementally making deposits in that. We're never going to put $3.5 million in at one time. So we've been we'll find out how successful we were this year at being able to do that and project that into FY27. And I'd say the goal for that would be, and Katie may disagree because from the person responsible for the budget, I'm sure Katie wants the full 3.5. As someone who we all know that we have to, balance that with the operating needs that we have as a district, some districts do it differently, but I would say that it should be somewhere around 70, our goal would be somewhere around 75% of our 1 year's worth of circuit breaker, which would bring us to right around 2.6 million, 2.8 million. So our goal would be at least to get to there over the next 2 to 3 years, which I think we're at the pace we are. And if we are to benefit by any additional funds from the town, which we've been discussing another $500,000, we would add that to that pool of dollars to see how next year went. And then did that increase our timeline to, have to maybe only be 2 or 3 years out before we max out at 3.5? Or where does that timeline sit? Again, these are fluid year to year, student to student issues that we have to provide for. So right now, Katie might be able to run you verbally through where we hope to be at the beginning of next year and in how many years. So Katie, what was your thinking on that?
So as Superintendent Barron said, the starting balance in the account was $8,000. The reimbursement amount was 3.5 million for this year. And we're anticipating that we will spend about 2.4 million, but that still is a projected number. So at the end of fiscal year 26, we are projecting that we will have close to 1.1 million in circuit breaker. If the goal is to be able to have the 1 year in arrears that we can carry forward by Mass General Law, we're still about 2.4 million off. But if we are looking at an updated goal that is about 75% of that, it would be about $1.5 million that we would still need to iteratively kind of retain as a balance in years moving forward. So that would take us, I believe, about 3 fiscal years continued at the rate that we're projecting.
And can I just add to that? This is a very good conversation for us to have, and this conversation should happen publicly every year. How much should we have in reserves? What are our operating needs? When do we need to slow the pedal down on putting money in that reserve? When do we need to move more towards operating? What is the balance? What has been the recent history? How are the balances doing? All of those are exactly the questions we should be talking about in front of the community, in front of our families, in front of the warrant committee. My recommendation is having 1.1 at the end of this year is insufficient. That we do need to build up to at least 75% of whatever your circuit breaker is. And the reason why I use a percentage is because the dollar amount changes every year. When we reach that maximum amount that we all feel comfortable with, which it could be 2.7, it could be 3.3, whatever that amount is, then that's when we can start to pull our foot off the pedal of putting money in the reserve and take some of those dollars that are allocated to us and put them more towards operating. We're just not there yet. When we do get there, we'll have a better conversation about adding. That's when we'll begin to, gee, we really wanted one more math interventionist. So wouldn't it be great to have this position in place? So this is the conversation to have. I'm glad we're having it. We should have it again at this time next year, because that's the annual conversation we should have. My recommendation would be similar each year until we reach a comfortable level in that balance that we feel would suffice, that if and when these numbers change over time, because they do, that we would be able to handle and absorb any of those pressures or expenses that happen during a year. It didn't help that in the last 2 fiscal years, that account was depleted down to $8,000. Sometimes people hover it at low hundreds of thousands of dollars. I brought it down to, I'm worried we're down to 500 in circuit breaker, or I'm worried we're down to 800 in circuit breaker. But being down to 8,000 in circuit breaker is time to break the glass and pull the alarm. And that's what we're doing. So I hope that this reserve conversation we can have every year, it's an appropriate one. And this is a hard year, right? We're laying off folks. So some people might say this is the break the glass year.
So I guess my question is, I don't know if it's a break. I don't think it's a break the glass year. And for me, a red line is dipping into the circuit breaker we built up to pay for operating, right? But if our intent is to contribute another $1 million next year, potentially, we can't predict that. I wonder, like, I would be interested in seeing a version of this that's a different number, right? Like that's a $600,000 contribution instead. And what would that enable you to do on the operating side?
So,
Can I add on that? I think I agree with you in that almost looking at the budget reduction list, it's almost what was kind of the last in, like the hardest decision between. So again, you had to get to the 1.212 number. And so if you had that, you didn't have to make that size of cuts because we were able to find additional revenue and, by increasing withdrawal circuit breaker because we're getting 500,000 from the town, or we just want to increase our usage. I also think we want to talk about the fees a little bit more, but like for any of those reasons, what are the things you would add back first, and what from y'all's standpoint is like the value of those add backs versus the value of, again, kind of more quickly building the robustness of our.
so I prioritize.
I add
Yeah.
a layer to that, though, I don't mean to interrupt you. I guess my question on top of that, though, is, I think about Katie talking about, we look back a year, present year, future year. And I think what I worry about, not what I worry, I'll rephrase that. I think that I want to be conscious of is we recognize there's not a final number that they're projecting for the coming years, but as we're thinking about this year, is what we're doing. Anything that we do this year will either positively or negatively impact next year, recognizing that we're not likely going to be at a 5.4%. We're going to be closer. I mean, what's been projected still to be talked about is 3%. So are there, as we think about that, are we then just looking at those positions that then would be done next year? Am I making sense? Like, I just want to make sure that no cuts. Nobody, I recognize nobody wants to make any cuts. At the same time, if we're looking at it as this year and then how that how that continues to help us next year to be able to have a stable, sustainable budget. I think that that's important too. So I just want to make sure we don't look at it completely in a vacuum, but I do think that those are important questions.
So before I answer what I value more, at this point in time with the current balances we have, I value the reserve counts for the future stability of the Milton Public Schools. So teachers don't have to worry every year. And so parents don't have to worry every year that we're not able to meet the thresholds that we're being asked to meet. And if we projected out in this meeting that if we were a 3% district for the next 5 years, we'd be laying off 10 people a year after these.
Mm-hmm.
So part of this conversation is also about whether we like to say it out loud or not, is actually reducing our FTE level. So our salary rollover budget isn't as high. Our insurance rollover budget isn't as high. And we have a leaner number going into that discussion each fiscal year about are our expenses able to match up with whatever the revenue is. It should never have to meet up with 3% increase, in my opinion. It should always need to be higher than that. But I really worry about being penny wise and pound foolish when it comes to fiscal planning for the long term. When I was asked to come into the district, I was asked to come in and help reset the district financially. This is resetting the district financially. This is what it looks like. This is the hard decision that people have to make in order to begin the positive trajectory and the positive steps to actually creating momentum towards a more sustainable budget. I don't enjoy it, but if you just look at what we did in FY26 by reducing about 8 or 9 positions, we were able to patchwork some of the holes in the budget, and we're having an excellent budget year. People are getting what they need. There's no crises. We're not freezing anything. All of our lines are being paid. All will finish and will be solvent. And we're adding to our revolving accounts. If we got 5.2%, we'd do that again, right? We'd be adding to our revolving accounts. We'd be re-examining what we want to keep and what we might want to reduce in order to do different things to impact the classroom. So I don't take pride in reducing the number of staff that we work with, because everybody who's a person on this is a real person, and it's a real job, and it's a real life. But I do believe that when you look back at FY24 and 25, we have to understand through that data that that's not sustainable. And if our number one goal for our budget philosophy back in September and October was sustainability of our budget, in order to hand a budget off to a new superintendent after next year that actually is sustainable and workable to be able to move the district forward, any superintendent who's applying for this job is going to look at your budget history. And when they look at it and they see it's not stable because we're using one-time money in order to pay for everyday costs, it's not sustainable. Folks are going to say, I think I'm going to go somewhere else. This is an important decision that we're making right now. And it's different than the kinds of decisions that were made in the past. And I'm not happy to be the face of these decisions. I live right around the corner from here. I'm going to have to walk my dog with the mask on. But the reality is this is important to really be thoughtful about whether we're going to make a hard decision now in order to make a healthy step forward, or we're going to keep these positions in the budget, which would be very nice to do, but maybe not fiscally responsible to do. So which ones are more important? Do I have a priority? These are not listed in priority order right now. I can do that. So I know we have this conversation about either utilizing our circuit breaker money differently, or when the select board who has offered us another $500,000 in order to support reserves or utilize in different ways. When we do have that conversation, if folks want to take that 500, break it up in different ways, I think that probably is our next conversation. And that's when we absolutely, Mark, will say, this is what I think it would look like. Here's the order 1 through 12 or 1 through 8 or whatever that is. And we can work backwards from that.
And I jump in just because 3 minutes. I'm sorry, and I know you all have a conversation. I'll send you some other thoughts offline. But it could be that it's not also one of these positions, that it's something else. So I just want to name that you have other kind of reallocations on the next page, and so maybe it's a different reallocation. You're saying, hey, if only we've had 25,000, even I don't know, whatever it is. I think your point resonates strongly with me too. Of penny safe found foolish, whatever it is. Of not doing something just to save it for a single year if we know that it's going to be long cut kind of next year, because that doesn't create the programmatic sustainability we want for our kids and for our staff and all those things. So that resonates. That makes sense. I would like to, though, just see, like, if there was additional revenue, if the town came back, or again, the select board, Megan did leave open. She said, come back to us. Like, the door's not closed. If there's something you really need that you can't fit within the remaining cut, right, come back in front of us and let's talk about that. So she left that door open, which I really appreciate, and just want to make sure we're at least having that conversation. And hopefully we can deal with that ourselves. We don't need them, but that's one piece. I think the other piece, as I looked at this, I struggle with adding the bus for 100,000, increasing the fees for 75. I would kind of push us to think about increasing the bus fees for everybody at a rate that would cover the cost of the additional bus. So that add happens, because I agree with you, needs to happen, but that it's cost neutral to the district. It is subsumed by the fees of all the users who currently pay for bus, so that would go up in order to provide busing, not just for the people who get off the wait list and are lucky enough to, but for everybody who wants a bus within Milton, right? This is the cost of what it is. So that would be one suggestion I had asked, which I'm not sure how much of the user fee, 75,000, is bus fee versus other things, but obviously that would be some additional revenue too, which, as I mentioned, would go to either reallocation or removing one of those positions on the prior slide. The only other question I had was, just from a formatting standpoint on this sheet, I would add, I would suggest we separate out the PMS MAHS teachers, because when you say that dash class size, as I read it, what it means is that you are increasing class size, which as I read it was like you're increasing core classroom size, which I know is exactly the opposite of what you said, is these are not core classroom teachers and elective teachers, special ed teachers. I just think the framing on this slide could lend people to snapshot, put that on Facebook and assume we are increasing. Your proposal is to increase class size at Pearson High School. So I just named that as a bit of
we are increasing class size at the Pearson High School. That's correct. Not in core subjects, except not in core subjects at Pierce, but a core subject at the high school. Yeah. So I just think separating that out to say kind of the subjects that they teach would be helpful. The DIB, again, that is the director position, right? Correct.
That is being reduced to, okay.
Yeah.
And you said most of that work is kind of being offset by the increase in the HR director.
And the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning and professional development.
Yeah, I think I would just appreciate maybe maybe it's just an email write-up of just how y'all see that work that they're,
Yeah.
FA has been trying to lead and do that is important on how we diversify our staff work. And I think, I had that presentation earlier this year, just how again, how you see that department kind of sustaining with her being less. I also just have a question of if she, in the personnel matters, so maybe that's not an appropriate question here, but just the ability of that person to stay within that role. So those are some initial questions I have about this. I guess the last one is, I just want to be clear, the reduction of BCBAs, the non-filling the special education teacher, the 504 coordinator, out of district coordinator, all of those things that are like special ed kind of related fields. Even with those reductions, we still have to meet the legally obligated,
And we will.
minutes for students within IEPs, and we will do that. And we can do that without these positions, is what y'all are saying.
Correct. And we built in a $50,000 buffer if we do need to do any piecemeal support of any one of those functions. So that's a strategic add back that we want to make sure that we have in place as well.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question about two of them? So actually three. So one is there are two that are the 504 coordinator. And I think I understand it, but the 504 coordinator, I understand that piece. So one of the things we talked about is having other people, either adjustment counselor, nurse. I know in other districts I've seen, not volunteering their work, but I'm in a lot of meetings where it's the vice principal of the school who's managing that piece of it. So recognizing that there are multiple people that work could spread to. For the 504 coordinator, I know that you're saying that we have one full-time and one 3. Do we know what that
504
I mean, not 504 out of district coordinator?
Yes.
So do we know the case? Like what does that it's because if there are, how many did you say, 45 students out of district? So are all of those going to one person to manage? Is that a lot for one person to manage?
We think it's enough for one person to manage. Because right now, the current out of district coordinator is only working about 0.7 on that work, and she's taking 0.3 of her day, and she's doing other things in the district.
Okay.
And so we would put her fully on that work of the 45 students who are currently out. So we think it's an appropriate case law.
And then questions have come up around the director of nursing position and recognizing that you're saying pre-COVID, it was done using a nurse lead.
Correct.
In speaking with, I don't know if it's fair to ask this question this way, but I don't. Do you think that it's doable from a workload perspective and an oversight perspective for somebody to be, if they're in a school as the nurse and then overseeing the other nurses and everything, compliance and regulations, and I don't know if they're doing scheduling probably is just their work schedule, but do we have the capacity with the nurses and do we think that float nurse is enough to support that? Like, is that a lot of work for one person to be a lead nurse and to be the lead nurse and an in-school nurse?
I do. I think it's a lot of work. I do. Mm-hmm. Do I think it's sustainable? I do. Mm-hmm. Do we have the model that has worked before? Yes. And when the model was in place before, we did not have a float nurse. And if we wanted to support that department in a more robust way, I would not take the lead nurse out of the building. I would actually add another float nurse. So that's what we talked about with the nursing department. Yeah. And that actually was a recommendation from one of the most veteran nurses that I consulted in when making this change. I just asked if you could structure this without a nurse director, what would it look like? And that was her recommendation. So it's listening to one of the nurses that's been here for about 30 years in order to kind of get a sense of whether that would work or not. The only variable is the volume. How many times are folks out? We have these peak periods where there's testing and screenings that happen in schools. We'd have to make sure that we had that. And we know that we would have to provide a substitute nurse on a periodic basis for the lead nurse to be able to go to school. So we're baking in the fact that then it's going to be maybe once every 2 weeks or 3 times a month where we're going to have to get a sub at the lead nurse school. in order for them to be released to go across the district. So we are taking those things into consideration. And the director of nursing just provided us with a kind of a status update of the nursing department and what she thinks the needs are. And we got that today and we'll be reviewing that as well.
So I guess a follow-up question is, for some of these, like reducing from 6 to 4 BCBAs, similar like the out-of-district coordinator, in that same way that the administration looked at positions that weren't filled, and then you said, okay, did that work? Didn't that work? Is there the ability, like, is that something that, say these get reduced, you're like, well, you know, actually we need another BCBA, or that, you know, the director of nursing, or is there that ability to kind of recalibrate next year? And it sort of as the same way that you're talking about, let's look, every year we should talk about reserves. In that same way, every year we should talk about, okay, we need more here, we could shift here. Like those are going to be ongoing conversations. So it's not like set, okay.
And I think that's what we talked about in the fall.
Right.
We are a living, breathing financial organism here that needs to be talked through what's working, what's not. And quite frankly, we've been having this conversation this week quite a bit. There's a lot of positions and systems and workflows that just don't make sense right now. They're not well supervised. People have jobs that they know most of what they're supposed to do, but not all. We've been here for 6 months and we've identified those. We have to figure out which ones we want to tweak and support and grow and provide workflows for that make sense, so everybody feels like they know exactly what they're supposed to do. And this, again, is no fault to any of the employees. This is the fault of the change of leadership that has not created systems to maintain them. And if you expect someone to do something, then you have to make sure that it's working. So I don't think people were checking to see if things were working. We're really trying to evaluate in our quick assessment here what's working, what's not. And we can tell you that by not filling the director of technology, we took a risk and we need to put that position back next year. So we will carry that and post it next year. We feel that it can be assuming the data in analytics. So we learned a little bit, we reshaped the position, and we're putting it out differently in order to service teachers and students better. Fine and performing arts, we think we can get by without a full-time $140,000 director. We made that risk. We didn't fill that vacancy. It seems to be working. I think our teachers feel supported. So we'll continue that vacancy. So that's an every year. We're trying to reset and kind of get a little lean. So when we hand the district to the next long-term person, they can begin to do that work in earnest every year as well and have their long-term thing. So we're just trying to provide some flexibility for our leaders to be able to make decisions about what resources they need in order to impact teaching and learning. Where we have not gone through the full district. There are systems that need to be tightened up and put in place in a way that works for kids. And that's what we're trying to do. And this doesn't address all of them, but it addresses the ones that we have observed and wanted to try to put on the table, just like we did when we did fill vacancies this year.
How you doing, Tim?
I drive fast.
I wanted to come back to the revolving account discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, I completely agree with the perspective. Like, this is a shared perspective on restoring financial capital to our revolving accounts. So I agree with that. So my questions are not about should we or should we not do it. But I think you just described a significant change to the way that we are managing our balance sheet. And that change requires behavior change. It requires changing the way that people, like our town to some extent is accustomed to draining those revolving accounts. It's requiring operating changes. And so I think where my question is coming from is if instead of saving $1 million next year, we can save $700,000 next year. And I'm not saying I think this is what we should do. I'm just proposing it as a discussion point. And that helps people and helps our town and helps all of our other boards. That's like a little sugar to help the medicine go down. So that in the following year, we can save a similar amount in revolving accounts. And maybe it takes us an extra year, and that's risky. But I think there is also risk in there's risk in making change happen too quickly. So that's kind of what's on my mind. And I have that's why I'm kind of wondering, what would we do if we didn't save $1 million next year, whatever the number is, and instead saved 75% of that? And just a hypothetical for you. Let's say we saw a path to put $1 million more into the circuit breaker account next year, like we did this year. And the town said, okay, that $500,000 in free cash, we're going to stick it in your operating. You can also, somehow we can put that in circuit breaker. Would you want to save 1.5 million in the revolving account, or would you see that as a way to reduce from our operating contribution?
You're talking when we're sitting here next year about FY28, or you're talking about right now?
I'm talking about for the FY27 budget.
So when we say we're not saving $1 million, right? So I think words are important.
Yeah, you're not withdrawing that amount from the account.
The projected $1.1 million that we'll have at the start of next year, reducing any of that 1.1, I believe, would be a bad idea.
Yes, I agree. I'm not in favor of that.
So that I think that should stay put, and we should try to make that grow. That into FY28, where we're sitting in a position where maybe that gets up to like 1.7 or 1.8, and then grow the third year to get somewhere over 2 million, and over the third year. So we're trying to incrementally get there. If the town does come and say, we're willing to give you $500,000 right now to support FY27, my inclination would be to put that into the revolving account. I know through the conversations that we've had, and the conversations that other folks are having, that they feel that $500,000 should go to operating. And I respect that decision point. I would only say that I can only look back 2 years and say, I don't know if that's a good idea, because the level's not high enough for us to be able to take that risk. When we're over 2 million, then we might be able to do that. And I know that the school committee and others might want to say, well, thanks for your advice, Superintendent Phelan, but we are going to use some of that. And that's perfectly okay. That's the choices that we'll make. And then we'll come back next year and see where we sit and reevaluate again and move forward. So I understand that that's the discussion, and I'm glad to have a discussion. I will only give you my opinion. And I think the school committee should be giving this kind of challenge to us about why and how come. But I have to say from a very high level that if I'm a parent or I'm an educator, I don't want to hear this on Facebook that we're short again. I don't want to hear that the superintendent might be looking at my position to not come back next year. I want to reset and I want to move forward. And I paid for the override. I already paid 2 quarters worth of bills. I want this to work for my family. That's why they voted for the 9.5. Part of this working for the families is trying to reset it in a way that's a healthy balance sheet. So am I open to the discussion, Nathan? Absolutely. But it comes with pushing some of the challenges down the road and continuing to have these conversations in bigger ways that might not be helpful for people's peace of mind and our fiscal balance sheet. And again, the people on this list, well, some of these are vacant, and for several of them are real people. It's really hard. And it's harder on them than it is on me. But my responsibility is to the schools to make sure that we're appropriately resourced for the students, but also that we're not running our families and our staff through this annual exercise of running out of money. We ran out of money by almost $4 million in 24, another $2 million last year. And we would have been short, even with an override, we only had $8,000 in that account. If we had filled all those vacancies, we wouldn't be able to say that. That was almost $920,000. Correct, Katie?
Mm-hmm.
So 1.1 million that we're moving into next year could indirectly or directly be connected to the fact that we didn't fill positions this year. So this is a strategy that has merit that I think we should be thoughtful about. That's hard. I don't want to do it as a superintendent when I look at my work through the lens of our teachers and our kids and what we would like to provide them. But I do think it's prudent when I look at what I think future students and future teachers and future parents want over time, especially when we're going out to hire a new superintendent who will look at that budget. So I don't take pleasure in any of this. I'm just trying.
No, I don't think that
Yeah.
you do take pleasure in it. No one would. Yeah, I think we're not making any decisions tonight.
Right.
So I wanted to have this conversation, be able to marinate on it. I think also, it would be good to understand that just when you said that you're going to hire the director of technology, I think in all of this, I had assumed that role would remain suspended, and maybe some of the other 8. Maybe just it would be good next time we talk about this to remind us of what of those are coming back.
Yeah.
And I get it now that
Yeah.
that's sort of rolling over as part of this budget, but
Yeah.
it'd be good just as a reminder.
So we're just offhand, the director of technology, the special education team chair at the high school will be added back. There was money taken out of overtime this year for custodians that we'll probably put back into the budget to be safe. We did not touch custodians this year in this reduction. We want to leave our buildings fully funded. And the other 3 are up there.
Also the assistant directors. Right.
Assistant director of special ed will be put back into the budget.
Jump back in. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Katie.
Okay, that would be great just to see in writing so we have it. I think I agree with Mark. It would be helpful to know just just to see a write-up or something of the interplay between the DEI director reduction, the addition of the assistant superintendent, the addition of HR, and just how that workflow will be managed. So I'm going to suspend judgment on that one. Honestly, the one of this that I have the most challenge with, and I don't know what the details are, I hate to disagree with Mark when he's not in the room, is fee increases. I just, at a time when everything is becoming more expensive, I hate to make access to schools or access to transport more expensive for residents. And that is actually the number one thing on my mind when I'm pushing on, do we have to put every single penny into reserves next year that we want to, when we just got the overlay stuff, and then this is constant increase.
Our parents are being taxed twice.
Yes.
They're paying for the override, and
Yeah.
they pay for the
And I
budget.
know what you think
Yeah,
about fees.
and I don't care for fees at all. I think it should be all 0.
Yeah, so I would just love to, I know we have to wrap up on that, so I would love to just understand some of the talk too.
So are we talking about these? Because we're also going to talk about the other involvement.
We were going to talk about fees and rough balances for the other revolving accounts. The other revolving accounts, food services is its own world. They have their own responsibility to the federal government of what their reserves should be. We'll be presenting on the community schools increase in fees and what their hopeful balances will be. Athletics was one of the revolving accounts that we had to add to this year to make sure that they were solved. So increasing fees there would be helpful. And obviously, I understand Mark's question, but to spread $100,000 across the 365 users would make that cost challenging for families. Do you know what I mean? And if you remember, maybe if you're a parent of children that have a wide range, we went from high fees for all those things to no fees to all those things to some fees to all those things to medium fees for all those things. So this is when you look at the history of how we do fees, and any district does fees, it really is, in good times you can lower the fees, and in hard times you have to increase them. We've never been able to be that district to maintain no fee for the bus, no fee to pay to be in athletics or clubs. And it is a shame that people have to pay just to participate in school.
Yeah.
So.
And the thing is, when it's hard times for us, it's hard times for everyone
That's
else
correct.
too.
Usually they match up. Correct.
Right.
So I agree with all that. So we are going to present fees at an upcoming meeting. In the balances for the other revolving accounts that haven't really been impacted are minimal. And they're not revolving accounts that really base themselves on 3 months worth of operating capital, like food service needs to be what community schools needs to be. Athletics facilities, our facilities account should really become a robust account. So when things break down, we have extra money to do that. We paid for a water heater this year. We paid for the elevator this year. That money is being paid for in ways that we're trying to, tap into the town facilities budget and the school's facilities budget. That might be a larger conversation that we have with Nick and just say, how do we increase that facilities budget? Because, it's hard to pay big chunks of money out for things that we know something's gonna break next year, but the main balance that we were talking about is wanting to make sure that food service has what they need, community schools has what they need, and circuit breaker has what it needs. Athletics and transportation, we can talk about as well. So our goal is we will communicate this to staff tomorrow. We will post all these materials on the website. I encourage everybody who's watching to let folks know that they can watch. This will be taped and it will be put on our website. Like all of our meetings are, all the documents will be provided as well. We'll let our staff know directly. We'll let our families know through the newsletter that we do over the weekend about what we talked about and what the reductions are. So we're, whatever we know, we want our families and our staff to know. That's our rule. And we look forward to the discussion of the give and take about whether some reserve should come out or we need to replenish some of these positions back. I know that's going to be part of what we talk about, and I welcome that discussion. And it will land in the right spot for the schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So you can
Yeah.
adjourn. and-
Yes, so you have a motion to adjourn.
So
Meeting adjourned.